board in turn build those bridges going forward. And there are distinctive features of their we're beginning to understand the point of view of the review, but looking ahead to how the board will be able to take that forward. So I think that's what I would say.
Very much. Just a tiny couple. So this is County Green, so I'm not quite sure. Look, Denise, you know. Yeah, better, yeah. And you so feminists, you know, people know. No, hence that we have the from the oversight. Sorry. Happy, you know, with joining us, and particularly for our Go Command item, but lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much, and thank you for signalling to the board that we are now, as you say, after a rocky first phase and startup, we are making significant progress. And Denise, you know that we send our appreciation to you and to the work of the oversight panel, everyone involved in the review to actually accelerating that process. So thank you. So I'm going to open it up now more widely for comments or any questions for Denise and Ken. Abby, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Ken, I just wanted to follow up on the comment you were making about particular cohorts of our population, because we are really wanting to look at how we we've got right access for all of our communities, and particularly looking at the kind of inequity in terms of access, and particularly looking through the lens of Black, Asian, minority ethnic populations. So I know it's something that Kathy's talked about. We know that they have differential experience, so it's really good to hear that there has been a particular attempt and success in terms of reaching into some of those communities, because that is really important to us. And as we continue to look at making sure our workforce reflects our communities, we've got more to do, but I'm sure there'll be some learning from that as well. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Respond very briefly to that. I mean, there's signs both with the Muslim representatives and the Chinese communities that they're pleased to have this opportunity to engage with us, which I think is a sort of step, exaggerating the achievements of that, but I think it's a step on the path to more fully acknowledging and understanding the different needs and the different experiences of how things are felt.
Thank you. I've got Richard, then Anne-Louise. Oh, Anne-Louise, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because it's the same point, because Abby raised exactly the same thing I was going to with Ken, and I think it's really timely on the basis that the work on the Women's Health Plan is about to begin, and one of the things we need to do is make sure we reach those communities. So finding out how you've actually done that is going to be really important, even if it's not in the report. I should come and
We would do that, and I think the connections that we're making are doing it in a way that isn't so specific to the review that it can be,
no, it's general for women's health. Yeah, no, that sounds really exciting.
And if you haven't had the Welsh Government's national women's health plan that we launched in December, we'll send that to you to make sure that you've got those connections. Thank you. Richard.
Ken, I'm Richard Evans, I'm the medical director. I was really interested in your comment about the choice of people not to want to be communicated by electronically by their phone. And just 2 points on that. I think knowing our population, we know that digital poverty is an issue anyway, and so we don't want to exclude any particular parts of the community. I completely appreciate it for those who've been impacted by adverse events. Having things pop through on your phone constantly can be intrusive when you don't want to think about them. I was wondering though, in terms of it in the longer term, how we might maintain conversations with our population, and whether that is a more appropriate use of as part of the review.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different if you've established a relationship with what I was most concerned about with the proposition around a text message was that this would be landing cold. Yes. And I think it's not as if to make any inference from that going forward as to the use of text or whatever. Without making a false analogy, I know how I respond things I'm expecting or something I know,
Yes.
very happy to receive that by text, but my reaction is not the same if I'm get a kind of cold call through a text, particularly in this context, where you don't know the moment that is landing, you don't know what's going on in the life of that person. I think that's made it for me. The risks outweigh the benefits.
I think to add to that, what's been really helpful because we've set up the Family Voices Steering Group and we've got a number of organisations represented on it, but we've had more recently had a couple of families coming along and it's their voice that's saying, just have some caution here. That's not to say that's not the right thing to do, but I think one of the things is that everybody's individual. So what might be the right thing for me might not be the right thing for you. So I think one of the things going forward, our learning of this is that it will be multiple ways of contacting and the unexpected ways of some of this reach has been through the webinars.
Yeah.
So it's not the webinars themselves that has really been the engagement, it's opened doors to others. And so that's really what some of the outcomes have been is we've heard about them, you now come and talk to our group rather than talking about it at the meeting. And one of the other challenges is that our aim, of course, was to have a family member chair the group. Well, family members aren't that keen to chair meetings, and I think we can only really work with people in the way that they're most comfortable, but they're comfortable contributing, but they don't want to chair it. So that's fair enough. I think if we don't want to do that, we're comfortable with that.
Yeah. So, so I'm Steve Spallon, the vice chair here. You're looking back at a particular period in time,
Yeah.
and that's relatively historic now. We've had loads of reports, we've had loads of recommendations, we've adopted many of them. We brought in new people, including Cathy.
Yeah.
So, to what extent are you able to look at, or are you trying to look at where we are now in relation to that?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question and something that's kind of taxing us, I think, as an oversight panel, because the whole purpose of this view is, are you safe now and where's the confidence coming in right now and for the future people about to have their babies? And, you know, so we've got a retrospective lens in a way, but up to 2022. But what we are also doing in the governance review is looking at the progress that you're making. And so, for example, your Gold Command approach is one such way, which is giving some measures around, you know, where is the safety now? And I think pairing that with some of the family experience of what's it like now to have a baby here, and that will always be varied. I think there are some challenges in that in terms of, and not just for this organisation, I would add around analytics. In fact, I was just talking to one of your colleagues about, you know, the power of information and using the information that you currently have and using it in a really creative way to get assurance. And I think particularly Embrace, which is kind of one of the generations of this review about the data about whether or not you know, there are concerns about the Embrace data, is how can we help an organisation get the Embrace data that's more dynamic and current. So it's telling you what's going on now, not what went on a year ago and you wait for a report to look back on. So I think how you use that data internally for yourselves is one thing. The HIE kind of data and analysis of that and trends analysis of that, which is the babies with particularly unexpected brain injury, which again are very small in numbers. It's a trend analysis. So that does require resourcing. And what you don't want to do is take your clinical staff away from clinical care to do this, but you also do need to, because that will be what will give you assurance of kind of real-time monitoring. And that would be probably our advice. I'm looking forward to hearing kind of Gold Command is how close are you to that data and are you mapping it and are you looking at the trends of that? Probably in much the same way as you probably look at A&E data in other ways. But I don't think it's a unique challenge for this organisation. I think many organisations around their analytic capability and capacity is a challenge.
Was there anything you wanted to come in on there?
No, I recognise and welcome what you're saying, absolutely, and it is a challenge. You know, we pride ourselves in the journey we're on to having better and better business intelligence, but as you pointed out, the data is only as good as what's been input.
Yeah.
And unless you the effort and prioritise that data being input at the point you can, even accurately, then you're only going to get out what you put in. So the key messages of so.
And I think part of that is interpreting that. So therefore that means, so as a board, what is worrying you, or, you know, what are the things you really need to be paying attention to? And that is a kind of developing maturity for organisations and a challenge for nearly every organisation I've ever worked with.
Did you want to come back in?
Yeah, just on that bit about the capturing data, that we need data for multiple purposes. We need data for kind of day-to-day operational management in terms of the pressure today and acuity of women and babies today. And we need the data that can then help us inform planning and give us benchmarking and trends. And what we need is a single point of entry that enables us to do all of those things. So I know Kathy's been working on kind of our internal dashboard in Matt's team. I think Welsh Government is really keen that there is a national dashboard, because one of the challenges is about who do we benchmark with and how do we benchmark, so we're comparing apples with apples and not something different. And I'm causing Matt a headache because I'm also interested that as an exec team and board, what are the things the board need to keep its sight on all the time, and then as an exec team, what are the stuff we need to look at every day and every week that enables us to know what it's feeling, because we don't want to go and take over Kathy's job of running the service, but actually I would like to know if we've got system pressures that we just need to be aware of, and just ask the question, are things okay? And sometimes that's a bit out of at the moment, but we're working through what those 2 or 3 things that would give us a sense of the heat in the system at any one time. So we've got line of sight to that as an exec team.
And I mean, my response to that, it's a personal one rather than chair of this board, is my experience is I think dashboards are good. But I think run charts are better, you know, so that you can look at your trends over periods of time, because one of the risks is, particularly with RAG ratings, is people spend a lot of time on the reds. And so I think you kind of need a mixture of all of that. And there are some pretty helpful people out there, I think, to help with some of that. But that's really what you want to be. You want to know what's keeping you awake at night and what you need to be paying particular attention to. And some of that will have, I think. You go, Jean.
Yes, thank you for that, Jean Church, Independent Member. One of the things I think is really important for us, building on the last comments that have just been made, is that contextual analysis around the use of data. Because as we're in planning and strategic planning mode, it's really important for us that we understand the context within which you've reported, but also the context within which we can utilise that in our future planning. So I think that's really key.
I had to, on Denise, if I may, talking about the work we do in our leadership and government. It's really important to us as a board that we have those connecting rods between ourselves, through the executive, through the service level groups, down through Kathy and her team to the surface. So in your recommendations to us, what's your thinking so far on how that might actually work?
So a few things which hopefully give you some assurance. I think my experience over the years is the last thing you need is hundreds of recommendations where you've already got hundreds of recommendations from. I can't remember how many. There's some sort of figure, I think, that organisations get this many reports, and I think that's what you're doing a bit of God command. So I think firstly that the recommendations are not duplicate of what you're already doing. There'll be different levels. So there'll be some clinical level recommendations that will come out of clinical reviews that are specific to the clinical setting. There'll be directorate kind of ones which are a bit wider. There'll be some for the executive and the board, and there'll be some things that are much bigger than Swansea itself. So they're Wales wide, and some of them are UK wide. We talked a little bit when we were speaking to Welsh Government this morning around the Welsh system about incident reporting, which is different actually to England, for example. And some of those recommendations might be helpful, I think. And there are other areas where Royal College Guidance has made some changes around maternity care, which is relevant to the capacity and capability of the whole of the UK, not just Wales. So I think that's the kind of level we're looking at. That they're absolutely achievable, that they actually have allocated an owner so that they are going to happen. And they're not on thing on here's another report that said this a year ago or a year before that. So that's the planning. And I think what we're trying to do is help the organisation on the improvement journey. And I think to be in a place where we don't just do this review, and I think as we've discussed, talk to reaching out to families, but this becomes daily business for the way you operate going forward. And there's a couple of more points for me. Is there are two elements really for this. It's about, are you doing absolutely everything possible in prevention harm space, and are you doing everything possible in the response to harm space? And I think the response to harm space is incredibly important for families. The whole area around candle openness, honesty, what happened. And I know that there's some work already going on around debriefing and having those conversations at the time so people get answers early. So those are probably going to be the focus and recommendations.
Did you want to add anything there? I think, thank you, Denise, for contextualising the complexities within the service in providing everything that we would like to be able to provide and know we can provide. I think that there are some national pieces of work that are going to be enablers that will help us in this space, and one of those is the rollout of the Digital Maternity Cymru piece of work. So we're all using one similar system across Wales and can benchmark using the same data standards and same measurable performance outcomes. I think the other element is that there's a big piece of work going on across Wales around at the moment around engagement with the public on maternity services, and we're actually a pilot site for the NHS Core Questionnaire, which will be launching in March. So I'd be interested to see how we, through a longitudinal survey, map the journey of the woman through our services to see where those areas are where improvements can be made. So I think we're on an exciting journey at this point. It's been a long time coming in Wales. I'm really grateful for the recognition that actually there is some system issues here that have to be addressed. Thank you. Do we have any more points or questions for Denise and then?
Well, on behalf of the board, I'm on the board, diolch yn fawr iawn. Cyflwyniad pwysig iawn. Thank you very much, both of you, for a really important presentation and discussion with us. We do take great assurance from the way in which the review is progressing. We look forward to the completion of the review, the production of your recommendations. We obviously are committed to implement those recommendations, and we will look forward to hopefully a learning event towards later in autumn, towards the end of 25, when we can really all together work through all the learning that's come up, because we do appreciate the structured way you've said about this. Are we safe now? What do we need to do for the future? What can we learn from past, but not to get stuck in it? So thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And you're very welcome to stay with us for the next item if you like, which is on Gold Command. So that will be Raj Krishna, and then that's quite happy with this as well. So, Raj.
Thank you, and afternoon all. So the purpose of the report is to set out the progress discussed as part of the Gold Command arrangements established for scrutiny and assurance of improvement with maternity and neonatal services. Members will be aware that fact in December 2023, the health board's maternity and neonatal services were placed by Welsh Government into enhanced monitoring. The escalation status followed an unannounced visit by Health Inspector at Wales in September 2023, during which 7 areas of immediate actions were identified. And a Gold Command structure is in place, led by myself as SRO, to seek assurance that action is being taken. The main areas of focus for the group are enhanced monitoring, inspection plans, national reports, open incidents, and horizon scanning. And progress reported at the most recent Gold Command meeting is set out in the report, but some of the highlights include. So the only outstanding action for enhanced monitoring is a maternity dashboard, which will be ready for use for the 1st of April 2025. And a paper regarding this went to Management Board last week and to the Quality and Safety Committee this week, highlighting what will be monitored at the departmental level, what will be monitored at the service group level, and what will be monitored at the board level, which will also give us an opportunity that if there is a highlighted area which is not at the board level, we could actually deep down, go down and actually look into that particular metric as such. The Goal Command is now giving focus to the evidence required to support de-escalation from enhanced monitoring, and this will be included in the presentations to Welsh Government from February 2025 onwards. The site visit at the end of Jan 2025 from the NHS exec will actually support this work. In terms of HIW inspection reports, it has been reported for the last few meetings that the two 2019 improvement plans, the 2023 immediate improvement plan, and the 2024 immediate improvement plan are now closed. At the recent Goal Command meeting, assurance was provided that the work in relation to the two open actions for the 2024 General Improvement Plan has been completed, and this improvement plan is now closed. The left one action is actually the breastfeeding initiative training. The final training session has taken place while the compliance figures have been validated. It is expected this action will be closed by the end of January 2025 too. So closing the whole of the 2023 General Improvement Plan too. So from there, I'm just moving on to the health, education and improvement Wales. The action plan was with regards to job planning, and progress is being made there too. There are 18 consultants, 4 which have got signed off job plans, 10 are with the consultants for a final sign off, and the remaining 4 meetings have been booked. Of these 4, which are remaining, the majority are either second meetings or where additional support has been sought. Timescales for the completion are currently being worked through, as they depend on when the meetings take place and the consultants subsequently sign off their job plans. Since the 2 HEIW visits, a new cohort of trainees has rotated to the service. And I'm pleased to report that no further concerns have been actually reported by them as such. There has been quite a lot of visits by both the AMD for medical education and also by colleague Dr. Angela Mehta to the department, and nothing has been flagged up so far. HEIW are due to return back to the service in April 2025. A date has been fixed for a follow-up review. And that is, again, we are actually looking forward to it and expecting no further surprises from that too. With regards to the incidents, there are currently 172 open for maternity, 116 of which are overdue, and the neonates has got 14 of which 5 are overdue. Now, I just wanted to bring in attention to the board that the fact that these are updated figures from those in the paper as the position has moved on since the report was actually drafted. The service have been in a position where more incidents were closed per month than opened, reducing the backlog. However, the numbers plateaued in December 2024 due to annual and sickness. And so the sprint session, which will be restarted to give focus and pace to return to reduce backlog. So just wanted to rejig members' memory that the fact that we did actually have sprint events, which actually helped in the closure. So we just wanted to assure that the fact that that's actually been restarted. The majority of the overdue incidents are from August 2024 onwards, with a few prior to this complex and some subject to legal proceedings. Most of the open complaints and concerns are also complex and part of legal proceedings, with 22 of the 38 redress claims originating from incidents. Given the progress being made, the other areas of focus are being brought to the attention of the goal meetings, and these are actually set out in the report. This includes the endorsement of the leadership program to support the maternity and neonatal leadership to develop further. It was also noted that recommendations have been made to reduce the risk scores currently on the Health Board Risk Register, and the revised scorecards would be shared with the Goal Command once agreed. And if you go through the report, there were actually 2 of our 16, and there are actually plans to bring them down to 12. While this is undertaken, an updated narrative has been included that does not reduce the score, but presents an improved situation. So members are actually being asked to acknowledge the work to close additional actions during the enhanced monitoring meetings. We assured that the maternity and the neonatal dashboards will be in place by the 1st of April 2025. We assured that progress against the HIW action plans is on track. Will all be closed by the end of January 2025. We assured the actions to address the HIW maternity and neonatal specific conditions are in progress. And finally, to be assured that the group has been included to remit with regards to the horizon scan to look ahead to potential visits and reports which may require action. So that is actually the report in completion, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rod. I'm just going to ask Kathy if she wants to add anything to your update before we open it up. Kathy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Raj. I think one of the things I would just like to share with the board is how very proud I am of this team and having come into this team and looked at the work and the improvements that they have been undertaking and how they are very committed to engagement, the experience of both the families and themselves as staff members, their own personal development, their ability to improve services and horizon scans so that we can keep ahead of those improvements that have been recommended. But they have worked tirelessly, and as is evident through completion of all those actions, of which there were a significant number. They have done that with good grace and with pride. So I just wanted just to recognise the staff for that.
Really, that's really good for the board to hear, in terms of the improvement journey.
Yes.
That will be, thank you. So I'm going to open it out now for comments, questions, remarks, any observations? Steve?
So, one small point, which is one of those assurances, it says the end of January, which is tomorrow. So has it been done?
Well, I should say the fact is I'm going to look at Kathy to answer that.
Yes. So we were very ambitious in the target that we put within that particular action around training, which actually, if you look at the national and worldwide BFI scoring, should be around 80%. And we were put a target of 95%. We've actually achieved 96.1%. So we have done that and exceeded it.
But the main point I was getting, when I saw horizon scanning, I thought, great, we're going to be looking at possible developments in neonatal and maternal care, etc., and possible changes in demographics. What you're doing is you're restricting it just to see horizon scanning to what reviews might be coming over the hill.
Yeah, and thank you, Vice Chair, for that. And I think what I would say is the fact that I'm not going to restrict myself to what happens within the organization. We are actually looking nationwide. So even if a report comes from another part of the UK, we will be actually benchmarking ourselves against that for those particular recommendations, because what happens elsewhere could actually happen within ourselves too. And we just don't want to be fooled. So for the same reason, we always go through the maternity side, the obstetric side, the neonatal perspective to make sure, are there anything actually impending? Do we actually need to be watch out? And if it is there, can we actually, and so we go through that in great detail, just to make sure that we are actually not left out. And so we do have a gap analysis of what we need to actually catch up to. But it's just making sure that the service is actually up to the standard that is actually expected from the John point.
That wasn't a planted question.
Richard, do come in then, Louise.
Thank you.
And then Jean, sorry, Jean.
Yeah, so just a couple of comments. So, and it's based on just quote then on what Steve was saying. It is really important. So firstly, Kathy, I hope the team feel that the goal command that's been set up, rather than be something that feels like holding them to account, it actually feels as though it's enabled them to deliver things that are challenges, not necessarily unique to Swansea, but challenges that are faced by maternity units across the UK, not just Wales. So that sense of pride that they've had in doing it is one of achievement as well. On Steve's point, I think it's also important for us to recognise that by the very nature of a goal command system, that will be stepped down eventually. And what is important for us to consider is what Raj is doing, is looking at the horizon scanning, is how we embed that in customer practice within the department and other departments. It's not unique to maternity. Yes, this is something that we can learn from. Organisational learning will apply to other areas. But actually, how do we make that part of how we look at supporting service delivery, supporting quality, service improvement as part of what we routinely do, and not necessarily it being reliant on a goal command structure. So just that point.
I think it's a really good point, Richard, because we've said that we will keep this goal command structure in place until we get the review report, the recommendations. We've sorted out the recommendations. We've done a 6-month review of the birthing unit in Port Talbot and the home birthing service. And then we'll take a view as can we return to routine management and monitoring arrangements. But as a case study, in terms of how do we help a service through improvement in a supportive, robust but supportive way. I think you've hit on something there in terms of a really good place there. So Jean, what's ahead of you, Anne-Louise? I'm sorry.
Most of the things I was going to raise have been covered. Steve asked the question around training. And Richard's point, I was going to say, Gold Command, we've come a long, long way. What next and how do we maintain that? Because for me as an IM, and I guess I'm hoping my other IMs will agree, the impetus and passion with which Raj has managed this has been palpable. So what we do when we stand him down, we need to make sure that someone else is there to keep pushing that forward. So we can't lose the learning, we can't lose the impetus, but what does the aftermath look like?
Can I address that?
Thank you, Jean. And I would say that the fact that majority of the work is actually done by the service group and my clinical colleagues. I'm just making sure it's actually being tidied up. That's all I'm trying to do.
They need a leader, Raj.
And I would also say it's the fact that as part of the process, it's also looking into the governance structures with regards to it. So even when Richard was actually making a very valid point. So if there is a report that comes out any part, then it should be the norm and the culture within the quality and safety department to say that the fact that where are we actually with regards to it. And then it should be actually be brought to the quality and safety group, to the quality and safety committee, saying that the fact that this is what it is. So, and that's what we have done before. And I think that's what will actually be expected to do, irrespective of which part of the service within the health board do. But I think I do have great confidence in my clinical colleagues that they will be able to deliver it, because the fact that with regards to all these HIW, we actually had over 220 action points. So there was actually quite a huge that needs to be achieved. And this is a service which is absolutely passionate about their service. And every single look that they're being given, they basically they know they have been scrutinized, but at the same time, with regards to all those pressures, they have delivered it. So I should say, to the extent that the fact that I am dropping down the number of meetings, because the fact is majority of the actions have actually been achieved. But we will actually maintain, as the chair mentioned, until the independent review comes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. And of course, it is about, it's leadership, it's governance, it's structures, and, all of these pieces of work need exemplary leadership, which you've demonstrated in buckets. And I am going on to Amazon to see if they've got cloning machines.
It's done.
It's really, I was going to say much as Jean did, that really I want to acknowledge Raj is pushing these things through, because of course the outstanding recommendations that we hadn't managed to close off were the most difficult ones to deal with, and therefore the most challenging to bring staff along, and he's managed to do that. So it's a fantastic effort. And I wanted to ask Kathy, you said that you're very proud, the staff very proud, but how is the general morale? Because I know we dealt with that a long time ago when all this kicked off. And it was troublesome for them, understandably. And obviously they've done a lot. They've seen how much support that they've been given. I just wonder how it feels. I know they're very pleased when the birthing centre opened and home births restarted. But how does it feel? It would be nice to know.
It feels a wonderful place. And every day I go up and I visit my teams, because it's important to have that connection so that you do have that barometer of how it feels for the staff. It is a busy time. It has been since September for maternity services, and that's across all of Wales, not just here in Swansea Bay. The staff morale is good. I think that the biggest element that supported the improvement in that is our ability to recruit and over-recruit, so that we are anticipating those high acuity periods and we have staff available to provide the care to the standard and the level that they want to be able to do that. I think one of the things that's really important to recognise is the opening up of the community pathway through the Neonatal Control Birth Centre, and the home birth service has had great impact in the activity that's happening in Singleton, which has made that feel even better. They do feel very proud. They are feeling like a team again. This month in January, the team have committed 50 members of staff to do 50 miles in support of Maggie's cancer services, and they have ongoing communication channels which they're sharing that teamwork, and they're doing it together. And those are really good barometers of how that team are feeling.
Yes,
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Peter to bring this item to a close. Thank you. And just to thank all the people involved in terms of getting the improvements that we need to see in the service. And I came to visit the service just before Christmas. It was when flu was rife, so I didn't actually go into the clinical areas, but I'm coming
soon, which will be really good. But when I talked to the neonatologists in particular, the need for us to make sure that the work that's happening on a national level about the footprint for neonatal services and the model for neonatal moving forward and the model for ensuring mums and babies can stay together, and the work that you were describing and the team were describing about the transitional care, which I can see is coming through in the policy statement. But also making sure that at an all Wales level, the understanding that retrieving a baby from Aberystwyth is not the same as retrieving a baby from 2 miles down the road. And so when they were describing the impact of clinicians having to go out as part of that rota, it's very different. And we do need to make sure as part of that next round of work that's going to be undertaken by the maternity and neonatal network and the joint commissioning committee, that they really get that in terms of feeding in. And I was very grateful to one of the colleagues whose name I can't remember, but she said she was sitting on all the committees because it was really important that our perspective in terms of providing support to across South West Wales were being fed into that process as well. So that was really important.
Thank you. So if you remember at our AGM in September, we did commit to providing maternity and neonatal services that were first class for people and families wanting to use our services in an environment and a culture in which our staff were proud to work. And I think we've come such a long way, certainly from the summer of 24, when we set up this whole process and when we really started to accelerate the independent review, which will come alongside us with the recommendations. So we want to pay tribute as well as acknowledge the significant progress. And Raj, your leadership, Kathy, your leadership, and all the team involved. It's been a phenomenal achievement. And we know that we've work to do. We're still on that improvement journey, but we're all committed to getting there. So we take all the assurances you offered us through the actual paper, and we look forward now to Quality and Safety Committee overseeing those matters they need to, whilst the review is still underway and recommendations are still in preparation. But Denise and Ken, perhaps you'd come back to the board in July, hopefully, when your report is published, when we can see really the full outcome of Gold Command work. And then we're in a superb position then to move to the next phase of delivering the service to which we've committed ourselves as a group. Diolch o galon, diolch yn fawr iawn i gyd. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we need to return to our agenda. Hope to find the first 2 items together. Hope that was fine. So we're coming back to the report on targeted intervention. Please, at 4.3. Craig, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. So the board will be very well aware of the areas of targeted intervention, and there's a lot of detail in the report and in the presentation. So I'll just touch on the key issues as they're laid out in the report. So in terms of cancer performance, November saw the best cancer performance of the single cancer pathway at 66% that we've seen since I've been in the organisation, and that's 5 years. So that was very, very encouraging. And the early indications are that the December figure is going to be 60s as well. So so we really are on a improvement journey there. Let's not pretend there are areas we still need to focus on. Particular focus at the moment on skin cancers and clearing the backlog that we've had, particularly from a dermatology perspective. And we also do need to do some focus work around lung cancer, where we haven't seen the same sort of improvement that we've seen in areas such as breast cancer. From a plan care perspective, we continue to maintain the 52-week outpatient target. And again, we're on a positive trajectory in terms of the 104. We're now below 1,000 patients waiting over 100 and are still on a trajectory to get to that target by the end of March. The sort of the target there for 25-26 will be 104 weeks, so it will be about maintaining that position going forward. In terms of areas that we still need to improve upon, you'll see in the report that we still have challenges around endoscopy. I know there was a detailed report given to Performance and Finance Committee this week on that improvement trajectory, and that's more into 25-26. Urgent and emergency care, obviously, we've covered a lot of that today. We have seen some deterioration in December with the pressures, particularly in terms of sort of ambulance delay 12 hours. But clearly the focus we need now is around D2RA, delayed packages of care, etc. And obviously we've discussed those earlier on. From CAM's perspective, you'll see that over the last 3 months and for a longer period now, I think we've been compliant with the target. So a real positive around there. And I suppose a good case now for de-escalation in that area. And in terms of healthcare acquired infections, I don't know whether Hazel wants to sort of take that up.
Yes.
Some general improvements.
Yeah. I mean, there's improvement in some areas. The numbers are stubbornly stuck in the wrong direction, and it is a challenge for us, particularly around C. diff and Klebsiella. That it does mirror a national picture. We've seen an 11% annual increase in C. diff, and that compares to 107% in Cardiff and Vale, and 36% in AB, and 31% annual increase in BCU. So we're working quite closely on a national level with NHS Exec Public Health Wales. We do have a gold C. diff high incident management group, and focusing on C. diff risk stratification and our antimicrobial stewardship. And we're making quite good progress there. We've got 90% compliance to the guidelines compared to North Wales 89%, but we do need to improve our outcomes around that 72-hour review with that switch from IV to oral antibiotics. So we're focusing on some work there. So paper went to management board, to the last management board, around the need to improve some of our compliance with our protocols, and that really recognises that we're working in a challenged environment in terms of overcrowding and busyness, and needing to manage things like bed space and single rooms for isolation within 2 hours, and the national cleaning standards. So we're going to monitor those breaches more closely and have a clearer escalation framework, and do a bit of a risk-based review around cleaning hours. But it is still an area that we've got significant concern around, I think.
Thanks. So there's a meeting today following board, coming colleagues from TI. I believe the next tripartite meeting which should be considered whether there are any areas in which we can be de-escalated. I think that meeting's in February. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. Comments, questions for Craig? Andrew?
Yeah, just one comment really, which is obviously there's really good progress being made on these areas, but it's the sustainability of that after hopefully coming out of targeted intervention. It would be a terrible thing to then find ourselves back in targeted intervention. So I'm just wondering what measures have been taken to make sure that can be sustained afterwards.
I suppose that's all part of what we do in terms of that improvement, that improvement journey. So I think particularly if we looked at planned care, when we started on the TI work, we made sure that not only we were dealing with the treatment side of things, but we were looking at things to manage demand. So we focused very much on the front end of the pathways in terms of outpatients. So we for the organisation to get to 52 weeks. That's now showing that approach that we took in terms of making sure that we see patients in a timely way at the first stage, so actually benefiting ourselves through the background. We continue to look at what are the alternatives from a primary community perspective, ensuring that from a demand and capacity perspective, we've got a balanced position. So Darren alluded to earlier on in the discussions in terms of looking at financially for next year is understanding where we are and what we've got to be doing. Similarly with cancer, we've ensure that we've got systems and processes in place now, particularly again around ensuring that we see patients at that front end in a timely manner. We'd certainly see the benefits of that. Breast cancer, gynae, and some of the pressures now are manifest themselves in terms of treatment and chemotherapy. So we need to look at those now and how we rebalance some of the surgical capacity. There's a case in for additional chemotherapy chairs to ensure that we can maintain those positions.
I think, Andrew, it's a really good point around sustainability, because it would really that be part of the IMTP process in terms of what is sustainable into 25, 26. The other points,
I should have asked this in the last. I just looking through TI and the performance, maternity isn't covered in these reports. And I was just reflecting, obviously great progress has been made, but how close we are to the de-escalation criteria in those areas. It's not covered off in any of the reports, and how close are we to be able to reduce those risk scores?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one we'll be picking up with Welsh Government this afternoon in the targeted intervention meeting. From what we have said is that, and apologies we haven't done that for this time, that we bring all of the items that are in escalation under one report. We've got the escalation framework from Welsh Government. I've just got only this week the updated version of that. And what we need to make sure is that all of the criteria for de-escalation in some of these areas are really clear, and we're meeting all of them. It's not just the numbers. In the description of some of those things, it is also about assurance around things like board governance. Is that established in terms of oversight? So it's yes, are we hitting the numbers, but it's also making sure the description of the things that we're doing are consolidated and they can see it. So they're assured, I guess, that we are sustainable in terms of the improvements that we've made and the approach that we're taking. And again, I'm happy to share with the board what's in the whole of the framework. Now we've got the document, so you can see. I think it is difficult working through what you get de-escalated to, because we've got obviously the different levels of escalation, and the criteria for de-escalation's quite specific. And I think there's some conversations about the kind of the black and white. Do you have to absolutely hit everything to de-escalate down if you're in targeted intervention to enhanced monitoring, or is the expectation you go straight from targeted intervention right back to recovery? So some of those de-escalating steps, I think, need a bit more of a conversation with Welsh Government, and we're picking that up.
Thank you. So Pat, we'll send the escalation framework outside the meeting as an action. And Abby, is it the plan then for March to bring the one integrated escalation against the group? And Steve, policy and safety picks up on the HCAI agenda and issues. That's great. Thank you very much. So we consider the update from Craig, and can we take assurance, please, from briefings that we've had and the actions that we know are in. So Darren, we come to you then for the performance report.
I think board members, there is a considerable Venn diagram between the TI report and this. And just to make board members aware itself, and as chair of PFC have met recently to start to discuss a revamp of this to make sure that board members get visibility to things we need to be visible to, and there's escalation through that reporting framework, which we'll put into place for the new financial year. So that's part of the solution to that current problem of duplication as target intervention as landed. So we'll share that today. I'm therefore going to start this on page 26 of the report, Chair, given the level of duplication on the target intervention within the start. And just to draw our attention back to the old-fashioned 4-hour A&E wait target, which doesn't feature in target intervention, but is probably one of the most recognizable metrics. And just to note, from September to December in that chart, you'll see we've gone from 79% up to 72%, reflecting lots of the challenges we've discussed at this board today. I looked at the national figures, and in the month of December, we were only one of 2 health boards in the 70s. All the others are in the 60s and one in the 50s now. I'm not suggesting we should shoot for mediocrity, but it's just a sense of the pressure across the Welsh national system and where we sit relatively. And clearly, we want to aspire to be considerably better than that, but that's the nature of it. I was going to pick up on the infection control, but we've had that discussion. Perhaps to note that Steve Coley is within the parameters we've set. And just to add to the plan, the clear discussion on page 36, there's a graph there which shows the out-to-patient waits over 36 weeks, because we're under 50. And for board members to be aware that we've recently received an additional allocation of money from Welsh Government to press further in that area, which we welcome. And we'll be deploying that in the last quarter of the year to further improve on that graph and get to see our patients sooner, so we know what we need to do to help them. I think that's incredibly powerful for us, and that was part of the rationale for why we went for the 52. From a cancer perspective, that's created a very good job there, but just to highlight perhaps on pages 39, where the backlog reported at December was 337. That's reduced to 279, largely as a result of the improvement in dermatology, but there are other team sets just to bring the speed. And in the discussion pre-break, we mentioned stroke performance. Again, to all board members, mentioned page 42 of the report, where you can see the key metrics for stroke, and particularly things like access to the stroke bed, what we need to do to protect that bed so the patients access that within 4 hours. Once they're there, we've got good access to clinicians actually, but it's getting into the bedding and into the stroke pathway as soon as possible. Pages 43 and 44 outlining our mental health performance, and largely across most of the adult metrics, we do very, very well and are sustainable there, but there is national pressure on access to psychological therapy for adults, and I know the looking into that to try to resolve some of the problems with performance dropping to 54% of patients get access now in 26 weeks. I think we touched on neurodevelopmental disorders earlier, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention that, given that it's largely been around 25 to 30% all year. That's page 44 of the report. But to recognise some one-off resources being made available, we'll commission the resource to bring the capacity to the point of the conversation just now. There is still a sustainability question there. And whilst we welcome the money, actually, we'd like to do something longer term to sustain the service. There's lots of other bits and pieces through the report. I just want to take us to page 51, where we pick up sickness absence. December being 7.73% in month, which is a bit of a buck in the trend there. Take us to page 53, where we see our friends and family satisfaction surveys. Most expectedly, there are slightly fewer surveys done in the month of December. There was still 700 done. Satisfaction was at 92%, which is fairly typical satisfaction. After that, Chair, we start to cover some of the key charts and observations I put through the finance report. So I'll stop and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Any questions, comments for Anne-Louise and Helen then? Yeah.
The cancer numbers, and it's great to see them coming down from the 337. I appreciate it to do with skin, but they're just numbers, and I wonder how many of those people who are waiting those additional times are actually waiting for treatment to start, or for reasons such as other treatment for other conditions or going on holiday, etc. I mean, are they actually people who haven't been able to start because there hasn't been a chair available, or is it there are reasons why people have not wanted to start their treatment?
So if you're referring to the backlog numbers and the number of patients on the single cancer pathway, that doesn't mean they've got a diagnosis of cancer. Those are the people who have been referred through an urgent suspected cancer pathway. So the majority of the numbers there in terms of the weight of those patients, as Darren alluded to, are in, I think it was, say, 100 odd in skin. They still haven't had an outpatient budget. They haven't got a diagnosis of cancer. They're just the totality of the.
So they are actually waiting.
They are waiting, yes, but they may well just be waiting for that outpatient phase. Of the pathway. So we can break it down so you can see how many patients are waiting at each stage, but obviously that greatly sort of diminishes in terms of the numbers, because only around 4% of patients who actually referred on a single cancer pathway actually turn out to have cancer. So a lot of the other things in terms of outpatient appointments, diagnostics, etc., those patients never actually filter their way through in terms of further on the pathway. Now, Abby's asked me to do a more detailed briefing on cancer for the March board, so maybe I can go into a bit more detail then and explain this, how that works.
Because I suppose my reaction to that is this the best way of recording wait times, or are we shooting ourselves in the foot by having figures that are very high and don't comply with targets?
But there isn't a target as such for the backlog. It's what we had set ourselves in terms of sort of an improvement trajectory. Because I suppose obviously the less patients you've got in the backlog, the better the performance is going to be. So it's not a target as such as something that we've set in, more or less that we've set internally in terms of reducing.
But we're going to have we're going to have a detailed report on all aspects of cancer waiting times and cancer services plan in March. So we've got Helen, then Jean. Helen, please come in.
Yeah, I can see that Balfour are making progress in some areas. Sorry, but not in others. And it's about how you communicate with those people either on the waiting list. And communication is so important to them because, they feel as if they've left some limbo and they don't know when they're going to have their appointment. Has the referral been sent? So it's about communication with the residents of Neath Talbot and Swansea.
Thank you, Helen. We'll get a briefing note out quietly on that in terms of how do we do it, just to keep people up to date on where they are and what the issues are. Thank you for raising that. Jean, shall I turn to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. Look at page 30, Darren, on the unscheduled care. Clinically optimised patients in Singleton seem to be stagnant over the last 3 months. I mean, it's remaining up instead of coming down. So is there some significance in whatever's happening there? And my second question was the elective procedures that are cancelled. Why is that happening? Then my next question was on page 51, and if Sarah's going to say, look, she's off again, but we've still got over 30% in terms of staff sickness being attributed to stress. Now that's not just over the winter period that we've discussed that. That's been more or less over 12 months that we've discussed it at Workforce and OD. Am I right in thinking there's another report coming to us in Workforce and OD at our next meeting? But I still think we should be looking at that. And again, we've got over a third of operations cancelled on the same day they are. So there's something around efficiency there again. That's my questions.
Thank you, Jean. Rena, were your questions aligned to Jean's before I asked Darren to come back in? Were they? No, they're separate. Okay. Darren, do you want to?
I was going to look at the Singleton beds.
Yeah.
It's related to that's the elective one. Yeah. So, but that's what the real particular optimised patients that were COVID who's from Morriston to Singleton team. So that's effectively that's surge capacity. And I know through conversation we've had with Kerry, given that soon what we're doing, the plan to, in the right way, start to come out of that capacity in the next few weeks, recognising all the system pressures that we've got, because that's surge and because that's part of our unfunded base, which isn't financially motivated, by the way, but coming back out of there was always the plan. We just had to have that capacity in order to manage the pressures.
Thank you. So Craig, can you pick up on the theatre performance?
Yeah,
issues? So links to Pat's point earlier.
Yeah, sorry, in terms of the theatre performance, I suppose the devil in that is very much in the detail in terms of trying to get into why they were cancelled on the day. So I think Darren alluded to it earlier, and sometimes there's the alignment in terms of surgeon and anaesthetist available. But there's a lot of patients actually who then not deemed fit on the day as well. Now, even though they may have gone through pre-assessment, there is something as well that either they felt the cold in the couple of days, or they have actually eaten and therefore not fit. So I think probably be helpful to go into that in more detail so you can understand it's a bit of a bucket really in terms of the reasons why they cancelled, but there's a lot of information underneath that. So it'd probably be helpful, Darren, maybe, and then when in subsequent report, and not the next one, to actually get into that detail and explain why that happens.
Yeah. And if I just add that the numbers on the chart are, they're not a percentage, they're a number. So it's 30 patients in the month.
I thought that was it.
It's an improved number.
Come back to consistency of reporting then.
Thank you, Jean. So Rena, did you want to go in on your point now then?
Yeah, just a quick one on the sickness issues. As you know, Workforce are actually doing deep dives at the moment on managing absence in broader sense. And we're looking at different service groups in turn. And coming next time is one on particularly on estates and on theatres in the following month. So in a way, we're looking at the areas that actually have issues with managing absence and managing attendance. I suppose you might look at it that way. And in particular, the rationale and the reasons behind it, so that obviously we can think about what actions we can take to assist that. But the question I was going to just put really, it's not expecting an answer, but Darren knows this is one of my sort of little points that I've had for years. On the performance report that we receive here, we don't see anything much about primary care and access to primary care. And whilst in a way we try to ensure that we get some reports, I think it was quarterly, Darren, we were getting them. When you think about how people access, if you like, secondary care, they have to be able to get a GP appointment. And one of the concerns we've had expressed, and I'm sure as probably Claes has had similar, is how people can access easily their GPs. So one of the concerns I have, and obviously Pat knows this in terms of rethinking through the performance report, is that we should consider that element of care, albeit it is the GP contract and everything, because in a way, how do our patients get through to us otherwise? So I am just putting it as a point. I'm not expecting a response on it now, but I certainly think as a board, we should not ignore that element of our, if you like, that links to our performance.
I think it's a really good point, really, because it's a wider point that Abby and I have been discussing. You know, when and how does the board look at primary care? Yes, please. Darren, do you want to come back on this specific?
Please, yeah, because I have got a bit of an answer in a sense. We know that my performance lead, Meg, has been working with Craig's team to identify indicators related to both primary and community care. We've got a suite developed. We want to bring that to the board in a different way, and I haven't just done a conversation with Chair and Hazel yet, but it will certainly feature as part of the foundations for the new reporting next year, because it does relate to a recommendation, I think, from structured assessment as well as your passion for it. So we need to pick that up.
Thank you. And Nuri, was that your point?
Yeah, I was just going to make that it's on hand because it's actually a recommendation that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll bring this item to a close now. We'll find down again for the report. So we've considered it, we've taken sure that we can, we've highlighted the few issues. There are various we've worked with different committees. And of course, we will be looking to revamp the whole performance report for 25-26. And a number of these issues will be included in that. And obviously picking up Jean's point about consistency. This is numbers, percentages, and any other way of reporting data.
I have an update, Chair. Oh, on page 52, it definitely says that the operations cancelled in December 2024. 36% of them were cancelled on the same day.
This conflict with one, so you're right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. So we'll move then to issues from Quality and Safety Committee, Steve.
Okay, so the previous meeting before the one on Tuesday was on the 26th of November, and there are two alerts for you in that report. One is the cessation of what's called the community dental service. It's a special service for people who need general anaesthetic for their dental needs. These are people with lots of other problems as well as just dentistry. And that has traditionally been provided at the Prince of Wales Hospital in the eye clinic. But you'll all be aware that that hospital had to close large parts of itself down for a period of time. So that service ceased in October. And I'm told, Craig will give us an update in a second, I'm told it's just reopened again, but we haven't yet got our first session, but I'll let Craig come in a second. And the other one there is, as we just talked about, infection prevention and control, HCAI, huge challenges still, especially C. difficile, which despite huge efforts by the teams at corporate level, but also in each individual service group, is still a problem. And we heard this morning that in Morriston, people are lying in beds within touching distance of each other, so it's very difficult to prevent infection. But this will be an alert to the board, I'm sure, for the foreseeable future, because the numbers, especially of C. difficile, are going down. Some of the infections are going down, but that key one of C. difficile is stubbornly high. And there was it's not reported on here because it's too recent, but we had a quality and safety on Tuesday, and the service group that was reporting was Morriston. So you can imagine there will be some alerts coming out of that. Quality and safety in that emergency department, not really possible to guarantee, and various others as well. But that will be in the next report. So I'm happy to take questions, but Craig, if you could perhaps just update us on that dental service.
Yeah, so it's the special care dentistry service that's provided at POW from the Ireland Theatre, and obviously that's been closed while they've been doing repairs to the roof. So I've been informed by my colleague they've started recommencing the list this week with ophthalmology and ENT. And the plan then is to schedule the special care dentistry patients into the theatre schedule over the next couple of weeks. So,
Thank you.
I guess do we know what the backlog is now, because it's been.
No, well, clearly we'll have a backlog. You know, it's been a pressurised area anyway, so we'll look to see whether we can secure some additional sessions to clear that backlog.
Any other point for Steve from UMS? Thank you. And we talked about the infection control issue, Steve, and we know that the committee's keeping a very close eye on it. So we're going to press on then to the end, and we're going to go to people now with Rena, your update from Workforce and Mobility. Oh, right, sorry, I missed a bit my time. Okay, two good ones today. Missed your first one. Wales fertility.
Thank you, Chair. The report is in front of you. This report details the work that's been done with the Welsh Fertility Institute since our inspection in November or January 2023, and subsequent work that's been done and subsequent escalation by the Joint Committee, I think, up to level 4 eventually, and the Gold Command that was put in place to turn that work around. There were issues, 7 major non-compliances at the time of the inspection, to do with leadership, governance, culture, performance, workforce, and some sustainability issues. Additionally, WISC themselves were concerned we weren't able to meet the contracted activity, or convinced that we were meeting the specifications. So a lot of work has been done on all of those domains, and we underwent a deep dive on the service and have worked on all elements. We've been successful in turning that service around so that we were re-inspected in in November, the wrong date here, September 2024, and very unusually for the ATFA, they said there were no further concerns, and they found no non-compliances, which is almost unheard of. So that was very good. We've also had internal audit look at it, and we have reasonable and substantial assurance around our governance and our leadership around there. In terms of the sustainability, so in terms of patient safety, sustainability, we believe we've stabilised the service, and we're actually doing very well on recruitment. The service now has a very good reputation, and people are looking to come into this service. This is the only service within Wales and provides the whole of South Wales. I think there is one area in terms of the sustainability, is the financial sustainability, as in terms of we can meet the contracted activity now, but there is a mismatch between the
contracted agreement and what it takes to deliver the service, which is still under discussion with the joint committee.
Thank you very much. Well, that's really well done, isn't it, for everybody involved in actually turning this service around. It's really a success story, and a tribute to you and everyone who's worked so hard to achieve this. So I'll open it up now for any questions or comments. We're clearly going to ask Darren about the financial envelope for 25-26. Jackie.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to echo your comments. Huge congratulations, because that service was so vulnerable. We were potentially going to lose the service in Wales, and in a relatively short period of time as well, Chris. So I just think amazing teamwork, but also excellent leadership, and I want to state that.
Yeah. So Darren, financial envelope then.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we put a case into the JCC, done the cost analysis based on the volumes. We did that using benchmark from tariffs across the UK. Well, so we feel that the case has been well made in terms of financial gap with the subsidy. That initial conversation has been had with the JCC. They've challenged some of the benchmarking, as is their role. And we've agreed to come back and further review that benchmarking with the response. The meeting internally for us was yesterday afternoon, so I don't have an update report today, but that was to formulate a response. So it's in hand and we're taking it forward in the right way.
Thank you. So Chris, can we express our thanks? Could you convey that, please? You know, one for your leadership, two then everyone involved. We can obviously take assurance on everything that's been done to de-escalate the service, and you know, as you say, from a patient safety, recruitment perspective, everything is devastated. We just need to sign off the right financial envelope with the joint commission committee, and we are taking a presentation from the JCC at our February board development session. So they're coming to talk to us about all matters JCC, so we can ask them specifically. So thank you very much again, Chris. Sabrina, I don't now come to you for the workforce committee.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. There's one alert, and it's alert in the sense that we had Morriston Service Group along to talk about what they've been doing on managing absence and managing attendance at work. And in particular, they actually employed a dedicated member of staff to, one, sit alongside managers and to assist them in running the policies that we have in place. But also they had done some audits and were continuing to audit how things were being done in accordance with our policies. And that had seen a very sizable improvement in sickness over the period they run it. So one thing I wanted to alert the board was that clearly this is an approach that has been taken independently by one service group. But it's very important that we should embed that kind of approach across the authority, across the health board in their area, and across the other service groups that we will be looking at, because clearly there is perhaps some absence of management in terms of effectively managing attendance at work. And then it links really to the things that we've put through on the report for assurance, because clearly one of the things that we've identified, and obviously the workforce team has been taking through, is a new sort of training package called Brilliant Basics, which is about allowing managers to have immediate access to training on things like managing absence, but also on other areas like budget management, which again, I think is an area that we've mentioned here as a board. So those are the two things I wanted to draw the board's attention to today. The only other thing on here was the job planning compliance. And again, I think it's Raj was taking this forward. Is he still here? No. But we've noted that there'd been some good work on this, because we clearly haven't been complying with what we needed to do. And certainly Raj has been forging ahead with ensuring that we get this in place across all of our sort of medical workforce. Thanks.
Just don't know, do you want to come back on that last point?
I mean, very briefly, I just echo Rina's comments there. A huge amount of work has gone into job planning. I think in March last year, the number of job plans that were on Allocate our electronic system was 20%. As of earlier this week, it's 76%. We are confident that we'll get to 100% by the end of March.
That's really important, because that represents the capacity we have, doesn't it, really, at the end of the day? So thank you. So Sarah, do you want to add to then and, you know, the rollout of the whole approach to sickness management, etc.
Absolutely, and to echo what Rena has said, and to recognise Morriston being an example of where that proactive performance management can clearly demonstrate and show a significant reduction in sickness absence. I think the figure was around about 1% in terms of sickness absence. If we manage to achieve that across the organisation, that's a significant step forward. More importantly for me, about having healthy staff in work. From that perspective, let alone from a financial perspective. So a proposal is being shaped to consider development of a similar approach across the service groups. Equally recognising our vacancy freeze and funding limitations, we're also considering an alternative model of training to push out to other service groups. This is really about our service groups managers taking ownership of how they manage attendance at work for their staff, not because there's a policy, but actually because it's the right thing to do. In terms of that. So the committee will continue to gain assurance in terms of the infrastructure in place. We will continue with the deep dive around some of the hotspot areas to understand the challenges in place. And it really is, from the Brilliant Basics perspective, evaluating the impact of that direct access, immediate access to training with videos and role play, and really giving them more of a lived experience in terms of how best to do it. From my perspective, sickness absence is not where we need it to be in Swansea Bay, and there is still much to do, but it is something that we are focused on.
Really comprehensive report as ever. And Rena, we also thank you, the members of the committee, Sarah and the team, for, you know, you're doing a lot of heavy lifting here alongside the other committees, but it's clearly starting to pay off, isn't it, really, in terms of the focus you're having and the particularly training development and the cultural agenda. So thank you. So Nuria, at that point, shall we move to part 6, governance, and then can I ask you to report from audit committee?
I'm going to keep this relatively short. The paper covers the 21st of November meeting, since we've had a further meeting of the audit committee. There are a couple of matters that I would like to both alert the board and seek its support. On behalf of the audit committee, I would like to alert the board that we're heading in the wrong direction in relation to addressing audit recommendations. We have 113 internal audit overdue recommendations and 13 overdue external audit recommendations. We received at that meeting 2 limited assurance reports in relation to records management and tertiary services. We have referred these reports for further scrutiny to the relevant committees in line with the board's governance arrangements. Since then, we have received another 2 limited assurance reports that came to the last audit committee in relation to Speak Up and Watery Services. At management request and the 21st meeting, we agreed to defer a piece of work in relation to equalities outlined in our internal audit plan. We were assured, given the risks we are carrying in this area, it will not fall off the radar. And the committee is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, that we are heading in the wrong direction in relation to addressing audit recommendations, particularly in areas where we believe we're carrying a significant amount of risks. So we seek the board's full support to ensuring we address all external audit recommendations, particularly limited assurance findings, in a timely manner.
Thank you. Abby, do you want to come in on this? Because we must clearly be getting close to having an overall limited assurance finding, in terms of this year. Really? You know, given the number of limited assurance reports we have, and this is absolutely not where we need to be. So, Abby, I hand over to you.
Yeah, we had a discussion about it on Monday this week in the executive team meeting. Hazel is going to pick up with all of the exec directors for each of the audits that they are responsible for, to make sure we're doing all the work we can to close them down in a really rapid way. There's something for me about being really clear on the management actions of each internal audit, and making sure we're properly having a conversation about, is the assessment right, and then what we're doing about it to close it down. So we are getting on it, Nuria, in terms of closing those things down, and the exec team took away the commitment to sitting down with Hazel and owning the closure of those actions, because as you say, it's really not helpful, and they're there to help and advise us. So we need to make sure we're taking that help and advice. The management actions are agreed with us. So it's about actions that we've committed to doing, and we need to get behind closing them down.
Thank you, Abby. I think the point about us having agreed the recommendations is really important. We go through a clearance process where we agree the actions that we will be able to take. I think it's important that we're clear about the actions that we're agreeing and that we address them in a smart way. I think that it needs to be very clear that the timeframes to achieve what we set ourselves.
And just to follow up by Dan, there will be occasions where we do have a difference of opinion with the auditors, and there'll be some things that we can't close down in the time scale, but they should be, we should be able to report those in exception and why, and being able to acknowledge that actually with those but they should be small, and but there are a small number of occasions where we will need to go back and say we can't complete this because of this reason, and as long as the board's got oversight of that, we understand what that is. I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. So we can because, you know, let's be clear, the route to a high performing organisation does not lie in ongoing limited tolerance report. Let's be quite clear about that. And we've set ourselves that commitment and ambition to get there. So, Julia, points well made, and we know that audit will be following through on this. Thank you. So we will come back to this at the dashboard, and we look for significant improvements by then. Please. Thank you. So we continue with Hazel, you 6.4.
The first regional joint committee met on 15th of January. A report from that meeting will come to the March board. I think the purpose of this report is just to update the committee that the board that the committee met and present the terms of reference which were changed and amended following that initial meeting and presented to the board today for approval.
Thank you. So these will be dynamic terms of reference, and as the joint committee gets underway for 25-26, we look at the work programme, etc. We may come back and tweak these, but are we content to approve them to enable us to really crack on now and develop the work programme for 25-26? Thank you very much. And thanks to Hazel and to Joe Wilson, your counterpart in Howard, for pulling all this together.
Joe, just to say that we are meeting jointly with the executive team on tomorrow to make sure that we're cracking on with following up on the actions.
Thank you. And Neil Wooding and I have another briefing to put into the Cabinet Secretary on our programme. So that's good. He's really interested in this collaborative agenda. So Chris, come back to you now for the Charter for Families Bereaved through Public Tragedy. Now it's here for approval, but I would suggest this is approval in principle, really, because there are a number of aspects to this in terms of landing it and embedding it properly across the organisation. So over to you at that point.
Thank you, Chair. The Always Charter for Families Bereaved through Public Tragedy was an outcome of the Hillsborough disaster, as Ken Sutton said earlier. He was on that group. The Welsh Government have asked all boards, all public service boards in Wales to consider this and sign up to it. Some already have. It's developed to learn lessons on how families treated with care and compassion, and there are 6 principles with it, which are in 6 commitments for public agencies around activation of resources, placing the public interest above our own reputation, approach forms of public scrutiny with candour, avoid seeking to defend the indefensible, ensure all members of staff treat members of the public and each others with mutual respect and with courtesy, and where we fall short, we apologise straightforwardly and genuinely, and recognise we are accountable and open to challenge. A lot of these principles cross over with the Nolan principles, with the duties of Canada, and with the framework for bereavement that Welsh Government have said they're not exclusive to public tragedy. They are things that we should be doing across the board, and we do operate in that. There are some things from it. There was general legal advice and financial advice. There is probably an organisational development piece of work around this, in terms of not just our handling at a major incident level and how the behaviour of Go Command and things like that around that, but also in terms of all our workforce and our managers around honesty, candour, which do overlap with some of the training we are providing, but we do need to embed it across that. So I think there is a consideration of those things, of what we need to do to include it. So certainly in our Gold Command training and our manager training. there's lots of lessons from this, and we've had a discussion with Sarah in the OD space around things like complaint letters and dealing with people with compassion and stuff. So even though this is about public tragedy, actually the principles apply, you know, for NHS altogether. So I think that's the piece of ongoing work we need to do. There is some organisations and have already signed up. There is supposed to be a public sign-in sometime in March, but we, you know, at the moment it is for us to consider to decide whether we are signing up at this point.
Thank you, Chris. Christine, please come in. I struggle with this, Chair. Maybe it's my naivety in terms of public sector practice. I'm not sure, but I think the documentation is really powerful. The learning is powerful. However, given that Chris has just outlined exactly what we do here in terms of crisis management, gold command, Nolan principles, I just worry that this is another piece of narrative that we sign up to when we've got all of those principles and processes and procedures in place, or we should have, if we're operating properly as a public board. And indeed an organisation providing the population. So I'm sorry if that sounds naive, but I would like to think our own practices underpin it.
I would agree. You know, when we look, there's nothing in here that we wouldn't expect as an organisation. It's to reinforce it and to reinforce it in the level of public tragedy, because that's what this is primarily about. But it is the foremost of our minds. But you know, the advice we were given says that.
Yeah.
You would be very difficult to defend if you behaved outside of that, and then always that's really. So.
Nuria, would you like to come in?
It absolutely built on that point, and that was the question that I had. I mean, to me, it's good practice that we really need to be applying to all concerns and incidents, regardless. And it is about hardwiring the approach and embedding it across the organisation, and it's the how that is missing.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to look at and alluded to.
Sarah, do you want to, Pat, would you like to come in first?
A very quick point as well. I mean, Hillsborough's 35 years ago. It's world has moved on, and it's amazing that we're learning lessons from that 35 years on, it seems.
Does that not come out of the review? And it was to do with, in fact, how the police and the inquiry went, that the families were not believed.
So it's the end of the review.
It was the end of that review. It was the investigating organisations who held the families in contempt, which is how they felt. And they didn't listen to them, they didn't believe them.
You can imagine that 35 years ago, hopefully now that would be the case.
We built our care after death services based on the SWAN model, which was after the Manchester disaster, which is those are the principles that we use, which are much more contemporary. This builds on that, it reinforces that, because
I think as well there have been a number of other inquiries since Hillsborough Path which have identified the same things in terms of family. Yes, build on that. But I think as well, you know, as well as services for people who sadly are dead and who are bereaved, you know, we have to apply the same principles to people who are living and using our services. And that's where I think the how and the embedding and the whole cultural OD piece comes in, Sarah.
Yes. No, indeed. And, you know, recognising there are many situations, there is many guidance and development of principles, actually, which we hold to the core of the NHS in that respect. So for me, this is about how we bring all of those to life. For me, this is about compassionate leadership. Actually, in your Chief Executive's report today, earlier, Abby, we talk about that. And that's about how we deal with everybody, regardless of those circumstances. And those principles from an OD perspective being embedded in our leadership development programmes, our management programmes, in our training and development, but also then how we evaluate what we do in that space. We can provide everything in the world, but if it's not having the right impact on the ground, that's key. And about ensuring we sponsor, support and empower our staff to feel that they can put the person at the centre every time in whatever set of circumstances they do, whether that is managing a difficult situation, whether that is engaging in a positive way. So for me, these are the principles that should be in everything. It's a cornerstone of the way that we lead and manage across the organisation.
Want to come back,
I just want to say one final thing. I mean, for me as a board member, what is really important is that those core values of assurance, that we have those core values of assurance around no blame, and that they're being built into everything that we do, not just trying to.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Abby, do you want to come in as we run this one on?
Yeah, I mean, I support all the comments that have been made. For me, this is about a time to make a public declaration for a particular reason. For me, it is about absolutely embedding compassionate leadership, trauma-informed practice into everything that we do, and things like the putting things right approach that is being looked at the moment. One member of Hazel's team is leading on that work for Welsh Government. All those things are important around at times of intense pressure when information might not be clear, but we are approaching our engagement with people who've had whatever bad experience in whatever situation, that we're supporting. When it comes back to what Ken was talking about earlier on around those and Denise, those families that have had harm, we need to be thinking from a trauma-informed, compassionate approach in terms of how we engage with them.
We're happy to approve the adoption of the charter because we're asked to as the public body. But there's the whole question of the how in terms of the embedding, making sure that these principles are applied across everything we do, and this is not somehow separate. So, Rena, Sarah, can we refer that to what, please, in terms of making sure, as Chris has said, it connects with all these other pieces that we have in place around culture, training, development, OD, etc. And it will play into governance as well around complaints, claims, etc. In terms of, and I think your words work around putting things right will be really important here as well. Thank you, and thanks, Chris, for bringing that. So we move to 6.7 then, Hazel? 6.6, sorry.
It's part of the routine report that covers off the interesting items discussed in the November board. Welsh Consumer Business Cycle Common Seal Register as well. In addition, the report asks for approval for amendments to standing orders set out from page 4, the committee annual report, and also changes to the front committee governance arrangements. They've reviewed those arrangements and set out proposals for subcommittees, creating quality safety outcomes group, a committee, planning and performance and finance committee, and also changed the membership to allow chief executives to attend as a member rather than in attendance as with normal health board committees. So that's set out on pages 6 and 7 for approval.
So we're happy to receive what was considered in committee, health circulars, the board business cycle and register, and then approve the things we're asked to approve: the revised SOs and SOIs, annual report from 23-24 and from committees, and then the JCC governance framework. And of course, we'll have the opportunity to discuss that with them again when they come to us. So okay. Thank you very much. And then Hazel, we stay with you for 6.7.
Yeah, so this report covers the 3 advisory groups of the board. The Health Board Partnership Forum taken on the 7th of November, and there's a report summarising what we received in terms of an update on maternity neonatal services, flexible working, the First Minister's visit to the artificial limb service, workforce metrics and the financial position. The stakeholder reference group met on the 16th of January and they considered appointment to the vice chair and chair of that committee, and will be updating the board in the March meeting on the outcome of those proposals. And the Health Board Professional Forum isn't due to meet until the 13th of February, and we are doing some work to support a reset of that advisory group as well, which we'll provide an update in March.
Are we happy to see? I'm not going to put you on the spot. Please know. But we are obviously very happy to have you with us, as I said at the start, and I'm sure that you'll be updating us accordingly from now on. Okay, we're happy with that. Thank you very much. And then we move to minutes. And we firstly have the minutes of the meeting on the 28th of November. Are they record, please? Very much. And then our special board meeting on the 19th of. And then the action log is the please.
So the first action will remain open until April, and the third one as well, where we will come through those with a performance report coming back. And the second action that's been added to the work programme, I propose that we close down action 2. Action 4 that's happened, that was referred to the Digital Data Innovation Research Committee, and they are receiving regular updates on the limited assurance reports assigned to that committee. Action 5 as well, the clinical coding one, that's been received there, and they'll keep that under review as well. In terms of item 6 and the board advisory group, we'll update in March forward to individuals that have been nominated, so hopefully we'll be able to vote positively in March. Next one then is under review in terms of looking at how we improve before viewed by the public, and we'll update in March as well. And the final one, 8 then, we'll update in March as well.
Anything for Hazel on the action log, please? No, thank you very much for that, Hazel. I know you keep a very close eye on progress with it, so thank you. So then 7.1 is just my report on things I've been doing since the last meeting, just the board to take note of, and your 20 of the business then. So is there anything that's occurred to anyone as the day's gone on? You've covered an awful lot of ground today, some very weighty, but is there anything that's occurred to anyone they want to flag now? Bring the meeting to an end now then, and Dr. Ryan, thank you very much all for your contributions. It's been a really agenda, hasn't it? We've got some really delightful parts of it as well, so